Hello and welcome to Lucky Sweetheart Vintage, where kitsch comes to play and fabulous finds are around every corner. My name is Catherine, and today I'm here to talk to you all about vintage wrapping paper. This is one of my favorite things. So today we're going to go over a brief history of wrapping paper and how it became and where it is now, and all the different iterations of wrapping paper. I'm also going to show you my complete vintage wrapping paper collection, which I'm so excited to show you. And then lastly, I'll let you know where you can go to buy vintage wrapping paper nowadays. So it's one of those things that's kind of hard to find and it's kind of expensive. So I'll let you know different places that I go to in order to satisfy my vintage wrapping paper needs. It's all about concealing the gift and hiding whatever it is that's inside from the recipient so that it enhances their excitement as they're opening it. Now, the first ones to supposedly do this were the ancient Chinese, and what they would do is they would take money that they were giving as a gift, and they would fasten this beautiful envelope called a qipo, and that's how they would give the recipient their gift, is wrapped up, concealed. Supposedly, the ancient Egyptians had their own version of concealing gifts and giving it. But the biggest ones that we know of course, are the Victorians, who just were such awesome, innovative people. And the Victorians would conceal their gifts in many different ways. So first of all, they would use brown, supposedly the middle class would use brown paper, and again, it was just kind of to conceal gifts. Now, of course, Scotch tape was not invented at that time, so they would use ribbons and lace and even wax to seal the gift wrap on. Now, during that time, the Victorian era, gift wrap was also kind of a status symbol. And what some people would do is they would take, supposedly, this is according to websites that I read, they would take wallpaper and wrap the gift in wallpaper in order to really make it stand out and pop and look expensive. So the Victorians were not only using the brown paper to conceal, but they also kind of started getting the idea of making the outside of the gift look just as sweet and as fun and as exciting and enticing as whatever was inside of it. Gift wrap was forever changed in 1917 when the Hall brothers, Joyce and Raleigh, were at their Kansas City shop, and they were wrapping up during the holiday season, they were wrapping up the presents in the normal tissue paper that they used. And then supposedly they ran out of everything. So they had this really nice, colorful French paper, and they started wrapping the gifts in that. Now, the French paper was not to be used for wrapping gifts at that point, but they started wrapping the gifts in it because they had nothing left. And supposedly everyone's like freaking out because it was so beautiful, and the Raleigh and Joyce realized that they had like something big on their hands, and we know them now as Hallmark. Yeah, it was the Hall brothers. So that is how modern day gift wrap was born back in 1917. In the 1930s, gift wrap became more stylish, and they started printing like little cartoons and icicles, snowmen, angels on the paper. But the 1940s is when everything changed. In the 1940s, Scotch tape was invented. So before that, there was no way to seal the package. They would use ribbon or lace, or they'd even use wax to seal the package. But in 1940, all of that changed with Scotch tape. My favorite period in vintage wrap is probably the 1950s, though. I really love those kitschy styles and just how cool everything looked. And I could imagine like a dad going out and like buying all these things for his kids and then going to the Macy's counter and getting everything like nicely gift wrapped back then. Oh, the next big thing is that in the 1970s and 80s, they started using celebrities and movies on gift wrap. So think Sesame Street, the Popples, Cabbage Patch Kids, those things started getting printed on the wrapping paper. In addition to that, in 1987, the gift bag was premiered or born in the Hallmark shop. So that was the next big thing. One of the big moves that I've seen so far or lately is at places like Lush, where they're using fabric in order to make gifts, and it always looks so beautiful. I love everything that they wrap up at Lush. This is kind of similar to furoshiki in Japan, or even bagaji in Korea, which I'll show you a few examples of, but it's just the idea of using fabric that you can reuse again and again in order to make a really beautiful gift wrapped present. And that's kind of coming in again. So in addition to the paper gift wrap, which I absolutely love, there's so many different styles of the reusable gift wrap that are being used today. And there are so many different videos that you can use of how to make your gift look beautiful in a furoshiki or in a bogaji type. So now this is my collection. This box is full of 1960s or 70s wrapping papers. I found these in my grandmother's closet, and I actually remember some of the different patterns that she used to use, like on my presents when I was a kid. But some of my favorite ever vintage patterns are right here in this, like this one here, this, oops, I just ripped it. That strawberry is definitely my favorite. I love it. I can't wait to find an excuse to use that one day. But everything in this 1960s, 1970s box is like really simple, and I really appreciate that, because just simple paper is just so beautiful. And you know, the pages are yellowing and they're rather thin, but they're good quality, and I don't know how to describe how good of quality they're in, other than just to say that they're in really good quality. They're nicely made, these little pieces of wrapping paper. I love this one too. That is so 1960s, so fun. And I actually remember my grandmother wrapping stuff up in this one, that with the animals on it. I kind of remember that silver one as well. Just plain florals are so pretty too. This next grouping, I think also kind of I thrifted for and came from my grandmother. But usually when I thrift for vintage paper, I wind up finding a lot of baby shower paper, which I think, like, I know for myself, like, it's something that you always pick up because you think you're going to use it. And then in reality, it's like one or two friends wind up having a baby, and then the rest, like, kind of goes to waste. So I really love this paper right here, this Victorian. That's like my favorite. Oh my God, that's so beautiful. Very 90s. So yeah, so vintage baby shower paper actually winds up being the one that, like, I always find. So that's why when I tell you about the different Instagrammers that you can follow that, like, have cool vintage paper, like, just take advantage of it, find them, and, you know, just, I mean, it's awesome how inexpensive it can be. This was also a lot that I found at a thrift shop, and it's definitely like a 90s lot, and it was cool to find so many in their original packages. The last little part of the video, I wound up getting sick, so I've got my little tea, but anyway, so this is the where to find your vintage wrapping paper. I have a little list of Instagram sellers, like people that I follow on Instagram that have vintage paper. And in addition to that, of course, you can go down a couple of other avenues. Now, it is very difficult to find, and when you do find it, it feels like you just found gold, especially because, like, if it's at an estate sale or something like that, like, you know, you don't realize how it's just really difficult to find. You gotta, like, crawl through and like really work hard to, you know, pull it out of different places in people's homes. So of course, estate sales and thrift hauls are two different ways, but that's just by chance. And in
2 years of estate selling and thrifting, I have only found vintage paper one time. And it wasn't good vintage. It was around 1970s, 80s vintage. The best way is to either go onto Etsy or eBay, or, I'm sorry, are you okay? I'm like not paying attention to him. I'm sorry. So the best way is actually, like I said, Etsy or eBay. You could type in vintage wrapping paper, but I have found that the absolute best way is to know exactly who it is that, you know, that you're buying it from. Instagram, and I have a list of people that are selling it now. You could also just go onto Instagram and type in the hashtag vintage wrapping paper and a bunch of things come up. There's always something, and the prices are always really good. Like, it's always like less than $10, and I mean, it doesn't include shipping and handling usually, but it's always like a good price for something so rare and so cool and so unique. So I'm going to give you the names of a few different Instagram sellers that I know of right now that are selling. Some of them have taken a break, that they don't have any stock right now, but so let's just get right. The first Instagrammer is Todders Trove, and they sell vintage ephemera and the wrapping paper through their ephemera Instagram. It's at Todders ephemera. So I'll leave the name of that there. Next one, I've been following her for quite some time, Magpie Ethel. Magpie Ethel sells through her Etsy shop, but I suggest also to follow her on Instagram, because usually she'll put up like, so what happens with the vintage wrapping paper is like they'll usually take like a loot shoot, or they'll take a picture of whatever it is, and then they'll say, you know, for dibs on anything, right back to me. So she sells it on Etsy, but, you know, just follow her on Instagram so you know what's in stock. And I believe that she said that she didn't have anything in stock right now, but just check in with her. So the name of her Etsy shop is E is for Ethel, and I'll again leave that below. Okay, then we also have Cindy from Flag Wavin' Girl 1509, and I really like the designs that she finds. Like, she always finds really cool stuff, and I really like that. So it's, again, Flag Wavin' Girl 1509. I am going to have to stop because this little guy is. And the last one that I have is the Snug Bungalow Shop. And again, I'll leave the spelling of that below. And the Snug Bungalow Shop is another one that always has fun vintage prints. And oh my God, there's nothing more fun than a fun vintage wrapping paper. So I also wanted to let you know about one more that I just found out about post-production. The name is Uninspired by Jenny. I'll put the spelling here, but she also has such an awesome selection of vintage wrapping paper. Check her out on Instagram. That's where you can find her, and she's having a pretty nice sale coming up soon. Always having access to it. It's difficult to always have access to vintage wrapping paper if you're like collecting it. So anyway, that was the video. I know by the end of this is going to be like a super long video, but I hope that you enjoyed it, and I look forward to making